Here we go. It's another edition of the WTOP Huddle. And yes, we get to use Washington and quarterback in the same sentence to start our program this week. Rob Woodfork, Dave Preston, Cichon, George Wallace. And I don't know if we had Ryan Fitzpatrick in that sentence as the Washington football team set to sign Ryan Fitzpatrick. I will just open up with this. He truly has had an amazing career, not just because he's the only quarterback in NFL history to throw a touchdown with 8 different NFL teams, but that does speak to what kind of career he's been able to craft. That it's only, what is it, him and Aaron Rodgers and Alex Smith left from the 2005 draft. At least that's what I heard from Dave Preston at 1:15 this morning when I was listening to WTOP radio. So the bottom line is he is really one of the most unique quarterbacks in NFL history because he's the ultimate supporting actor. He's filled this bridge role for so many teams, and it's not just wearing a baseball cap on the sideline. We're talking about a guy who was the Dolphins MVP in 2019, wins leadership awards. So, having said all that, I'll start with you, Rob Woodfork. Ryan FitzMagic coming to DC. Your thoughts?
Well, I would feel better about having a quarterback with swagger and a respected veteran who is beloved by his teammates if his name was Cam Newton. But since that's apparently not going to happen, FitzMagic, look, I have mixed feelings about this because on the one hand, if you look at his numbers, just his numbers, he's got the 5th best QBR in the league over the course of the last 3 seasons. And that puts him right below Russell Wilson and right above Deshaun Watson, who I think objectively everybody would love as their number 1 option here in Washington. But there's a reason why he's now on his 9th team. And that's because with every time he throws those scintillating 400-yard, 4-touchdown games, there's also the head-scratching 4 interception games and like, what the heck is he doing sort of decisions. So in a Ron Rivera offense that is predicated on running the ball or at least controlling the clock and playing good, sound defense, I don't know how he's a fit, but he is automatically, he walks in here as the best and most accomplished quarterback out of the ones that they have. I'm just not sure about the fit just based on what it is that they're trying to do and what they tried to do last season.
Clearly they believe something because he's 10 million, 12 million, whatever it is with incentives. First, before we go any further, show of hands. Did anybody even have him on their radar, remotely think this was going to happen? You did, Chris. He was on. Chris,
he wasn't on my bingo card, but I understand.
Okay, all right, Chris. He was. I must admit, I think there's some people you might have been saying, was he going to play another year or whatever? So, Chris, you were thinking about Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, and it was kind of recently that I was, just because of the fact that it really seems like these teams in the top 10 are clamoring for starting quarterback. And I don't think you're going to get even the Trey Lance who just had his pro day with North Dakota State throwing these like 70-yard bombs. He's going to be probably going in the top 5. You've got Zach Wilson. You have Mac Jones. You have just I think they looked at 19 and said, we're not going to get a quarterback here that's going to be able to play right away. And we have, in our opinion, a defense that is coming into their own. Yes, they lost Darby in free agency, but did anyone here want to pay Darby what he's getting, that $20 million? Probably not. I thought he had himself a nice little bounce back year, but I think they looked at Fitzpatrick. They looked at the success they had last year with Miami, as you alluded to, and the fact that Taylor Heinicke is not somebody you can go into offseason as saying he is our starting quarterback. And you can't say the same thing about Kyle Allen. You can at least sell to the fan base. We're trying to win right now, and Ryan Fitzpatrick allows us to do it. So I like the signing.
George, your turn.
Yeah, I look, this wasn't plan A, B, C, or D, probably. And I'm fine with, look, he's said all along he's not going to mortgage the future. The only one I would have given up the picks for is Deshaun Watson. If that was an option, you go all in and then you sew up your quarterback. But look, he's a guy that is going to come in. He'll let all 3 of them compete. Fitzpatrick will be the guy, but it's also, you can continue to build the other pieces around, and you have a guy that, look, there's no more check down Charlie dink and dunk stuff with Fitzpatrick. You're going to have an entertaining, I think. It's going to be some fun to watch. So I think you can have a somewhat solid quarterback, and you can still build the other pieces that you need. And then you're not gonna have to rush this year to get your long-term quarterback. So I think it's fine. It wasn't my, top of the list. No, but again, I'd rather not give up stuff for Sam Darnold. I'd rather not give up picks for Mariota. Maybe they're going to cut Mariota. We don't know, but you sign a guy for $10 million. That's fine. He'll compete with the other two, and you've got solid guys that can manage a game for you and can maybe, who knows? Look, here's what's going to be the problem. If he goes out and he wins 10, 11 games, then what? Then you're going to have to talk about him being the quarterback in the future. I'm sure fans will take that this year, but I have no problem with it. I think you're not going to break the bank for somebody, and you don't have to mortgage the future to get him, and you can still build the pieces around him. So I think it's solid for at this point for what they got.
And quietly,
let's go to Rob. Rob, go ahead.
And quietly, this isn't 2005. $10 million for a quarterback is actually sort of a discount. So you're not breaking the bank for him. And also, it doesn't preclude you from making another move if, in fact, there is another move to make, namely Deshaun Watson, because like you said, nobody wants to sacrifice any real assets for Sam Darnold, and the big question mark that is. If Deshaun Watson is available and it's not too rich for your blood, then you go ahead. This doesn't stop you from getting in that sweepstakes if you so choose. But the thing because the thing that Chris was saying has me thinking, if you think you're going to contend for this division again, I mean, let's say they go 7-9 again, you're still not going to be in a position to draft a quarterback next year either. So you're just in a perpetual cycle of being toward the middle of the first round of the draft and being out of reach of getting a franchise quarterback. So they're going to eventually either have to luck into somebody, or they're going to have to get bold and they're going to have to get creative.
Well, and by the way, there's every reason to believe they'll contend for the division next year, and not.
It's them in Dallas, right? It's them in Dallas,
and not just because they did this year, but because that's the way the NFL is structured. So it gets TV ratings. You can contend each and every season, but given the structure of this division, there's certainly a belief in that. And also, I think what we're developing here is a short answer that the Washington football team could not stand pat, and also there was not enough belief that there was something in the draft, and nor should there have been necessarily with the 19th pick. Dave Preston, your turn on FitzMagic.
I think it's an upgrade, and not just on beard alone. I mean, we're talking 19th century presidential politics there. Rutherford Hayes, James A. Garfield. I think Ulysses Grant had a nice one along with Benjamin Harrison. If you had a beard and you were from Ohio in the late 19th century, odds are you were a U.S. president. I like the upgrade because you look at the guys that they started last year, and Fitzpatrick is an upgrade over each of them. He's Dwayne Haskins never had his head really in the game. Here comes in a veteran who knows how to grind his way through a season, who knows how to stick to a roster. Alex Smith could never really stay healthy. Here's a guy who is relatively healthy comparatively, who has both of his legs and doesn't have a compound fracture that he's still recovering from, 2-3 years ago, because, even a healthy Alex Smith is still a recovering one. Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen, two guys with very limited exposure, two guys who really haven't seen the snaps that you get when you bring in a Fitzpatrick who has played for 17 years. That's absolutely incredible. We talked about how he's from the 2005 draft, 250th overall selection. And Alex Smith was the first overall pick. There was a stretch last fall at one point where if you looked at their career numbers, they were within a couple of completions, a couple of yards, a couple of attempts of one another. It was absolutely eerie, because these are two guys who have had markedly different career paths and completely different guys coming out of college and expectations. And the fact that they were in kind of the same world, so to speak, career numbers wise, it's changed a little bit. Absolutely crazy. So this is a great solution for 2021. For all we know, maybe he doesn't even start a full season. Maybe it winds up getting passed along, but I like it as an upgrade over the 4 guys that they had start games last year for this team.
Yeah, and I don't say to be flippant, as Rob said, there's a reason he's been on 9 teams now, but there's also a reason he's been on 9 teams. And it's also a credit to him that he's been on 9 teams and had the career that you just described.
And it's almost fitting that he comes to Washington, because we had a guy like that once upon a time by the name of Gus Frerotte. Remember him?
Right, yes.
7th round pick, ends up putting together a really nice long career as a journeyman quarterback. This is kind of in that same vein.
I also think that in today's free agency era, whereas we all grew up in an era watching football where you had career backups like Gary Kubiak was Denver's. He was always backup in Denver for a decade. You don't. Don Strock was in Miami for the longest time under multiple guys. In the 21st century, Don Strock gets a free agent deal somewhere else. Kubiak finds something else. We live in an era where guys will be a backup for a while, but they'll eventually be moved somewhere else because they'll either want a starting opportunity somewhere else, or they will have been a backup for so long, they'll be too expensive to be the number 2 guy for whatever franchise they're with.
And once upon a time, the backup quarterback looked like the great gig. He's got a baseball cap, holds a clipboard, a headset, and he never gets hurt. George?
Here's the other thing. If they go with these 3 and don't draft another guy, then there's not going to be a question all year. Oh, when is he going to get a chance? When is the Dwayne Haskins going to get a chance? When is the young guy going to get a chance? We can forget about all that. Just let whoever's better of the 3 of them play ball.
If he starts everything, if he starts 2, if he starts whatever, there's no, again, as pointed out, it's amazing to say 10 million is pretty cheap now in the NFL. So there's not a big risk here. Hey, the NFL season officially is starting. Any other thoughts on the Washington football team now that we know about a quarterback direction? Anybody want to jump in there about what they'd like to see over the next week or so?
There's one free agent move I'm looking for. I think Curtis Samuel would be a nice fit here at wide receiver.
Cam's already gone.
What's that?
Cam's already gone.
He's still available in trade if they upgrade. I'm not done yet. But no, Curtis Samuel played in Carolina for Ron Rivera. He would be a natural fit in this offense and as a great compliment to Terry McLaurin. I'm not predicting that it's going to happen, but you connect the dots, it makes a lot of sense. That's something I'd look for here in the next few days.
He's going to Jacksonville, Ohio State South now with Urban Meyer. He signed.
No, I'll say no. This isn't Washington football team related, but I am going to give you this. I think in 2022, I think you see, because of that Ohio State connection, I think you see Zeke Elliott in Jacksonville next year because they're not going to be able to afford to keep him with Dak Prescott making the money that he's making now. But that's a 2022 prediction. I know I'm sort of messing with the time now.
Well, that's okay. That's why we record these things. This will go viral if that happens. So we've got it on tape. We're about 10 minutes of the show or something like that. All right, let's get to March Madness. So we'll start with you, Dave. Preston is. I know you got to get back to filling out your coffee cups, and we're following the WTOP dance card and your wonderful coverage. Where do you want to start on that? Because first of all, Georgetown suddenly seems like they should be considered the favorite at the 12 seed. Full credit to my friend Patrick Ewing, and yeah, it sounds like I'm name dropping, but he used to be an assistant with the Wizards, and I watched him pay his dues, and I think it needs to be said, and most people know in this area, but he was not named head coach of Georgetown. The fact he went to Georgetown, helped build that program with John Thompson, or helped elevate that program. That's true, but he paid his dues to get that opportunity. He probably should have gotten an opportunity in the NBA sooner, but that's a whole nother conversation. But go ahead, Dave.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think what hurt him was teams are kind of reluctant to hire big men as head coaches. You look at who are the most successful coaches. You think of say a Pat Riley. He was a forward/big guard. Phil Jackson might be the exception who proves the rule. He was in the minors. He was in the CBA for the longest time. Scott Brooks, former guard. You think that there's the theory that big men play basketball because they're big and they don't have that love for the game. They're not grinders, so to speak. But Patrick Ewing, fantastic job as head coach. They were, 9-12 just a week ago. They were a mess entering their COVID pandemic break that they had to take. They had 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks off. They came out of that gangbusters. Just the way that he was able to mix together a roster, 6 freshmen, 3 transfers, and then they put it all together last week. Defense was the difference. They held their 4 opponents to a combined, I think, 37% shooting, 26% from 3-point range. They out-rebounded them in just about every game. If they can continue to do that in the NCAA tournament, because defense travels, they could get to the Sweet 16. I don't think they will. I think they're going to have a huge test with McKinley Wright, the Colorado guard. He's 3-time first team All Pac-12. He's going to be a major barrier for them to get to the second round. Also, Florida State would await them if they were to get to the round of 32. some other locals. Maryland takes on UConn. Fans familiar with Howard will recognize the name R.J. Cole, former Bison guard, two-time, I think, MEAC Player of the Year, transferred up there. I think Maryland gets to the second round there. They will have their hands full with the very good Alabama team that kind of sprung onto this the scene this winter. Virginia Tech, two teams suffering from COVID. Virginia had to pull out of the ACC tournament. They won't even be in Indiana until later this week. So it's going to be a challenge for them. They also face a guy by the name of Jason Preston, no relation, but he's the leading scorer, rebounder, and assist guy for Ohio. I could easily see Virginia being bounced in the first round. Virginia Tech's another school suffered due to COVID, because they have only played 3 games since February 6th. Very tough to get a rhythm together, and I don't think they'll have a rhythm together this week. VCU plays Oregon. They've got a chance to get through. Bones Highland is a dynamic player at both ends of the floor. And I think Mount St. Mary's, hey, if they get to Michigan, if they get to the game against Michigan and it's not a blowout by halftime, all is good for the Mountaineers.
All right. Well, and again, I think we do specifically just with Maryland, Georgetown. We have 2 great stories here because they're both stories that probably shouldn't have happened, or at least for a while we didn't think were going to happen. And again, when you just described that Georgetown roster, I mean, a freshman, what's his name? Dante Smith wins the MVP of he's a freshman. He didn't even start the first 5 games. When you describe the makeup of the Georgetown roster, they lose a Mac McClung, et cetera, you're thinking there's no way. And now we're talking about Big East champions. The same story for Maryland.
And what's funny, what's funny, Dave, is that that not only are they in the tournament, they're one of the chic picks to be that 12 that upsets the 5, like we see every year. Which quietly, as we fill out our brackets, I actually in my research today found out that the 5-12, and maybe Dave knows this already, the 5-12 upset that we have, that has become famous as the upset in the bracket. The 5s are actually 24-16 in those games. It's actually the 6-11 matchup that has more upsets. The 6 seed is 19-21 against the 11 seeds in the last 10 tournaments. So something to think about when you're filling out your bracket.
Hold on. So you're saying
start all over again. Rob, you just ruined my day.
That's why I don't do mine till Wednesday.
You're saying Syracuse has a chance against San Diego State. Before I depart for the 115, we talked about Patrick Ewing, the job he did at Georgetown. Mark Turgeon, the job that he has done at Maryland this winter, doesn't have any alpha dogs on that team. Jalen Smith not walking through that door. Anthony Cowan Jr. Wound up graduating last year with a lot of supporting guys. He was able to put together a stretch against some very good competition and grind their way into the NCAA tournament. I think a lot of it's the culture that he's built there too. A few years ago, he made the commitment to go away from one and done guys and get guys who would be here 2, 3, 4 years. Daryl Morcell is that guy. He is a guy who years from now, they're going to say he was great. And it's like, he didn't put up great numbers or this, that, the other thing, but he was a fantastic program player for Mark Turgeon. And I'm happy that he gets a chance to go dancing this week.
Yeah, something's going on there because look, several times they could have fallen off the cliff and they kept getting back up. And I didn't think they were going to beat Michigan State. They had the 2 games losing streak. And as you mentioned, all of you mentioned, we talked about last week, Michigan State had to come into that game plenty mad based on what happened previously against Maryland. I thought, this is where it trips up. Full credit to them. George?
Yeah, and they could have folded after the bad losses at the end of the year to Northwestern and Penn State, and to go into that Michigan State game. Michigan State had just beaten number 2 Michigan. So yeah, I give Mark some credit there. It's going to be interesting too, with this tournament run now. He's got this is the year for his contract. He's got 2 years left. You don't go into a lame duck kind of season in college. So it's a time now for Damon Evans, what he's going to do with Mark Turgeon. A lot of Mark Turgeon can't coach kind of guys out there. And, he's not the whole fan base not enamored with him, but I give him credit.
You and Chi had him fired last week.
I never had him fired.
Oh, I did.
No,
I mean,
Chi did. I was just trying to lump you in with him.
No, I didn't have him fired. But this is the time where you're gonna get an extension or he's gonna be looking for another gig. But I give him credit for this year. I do.
Yeah. Right, and it's not brought up lightly because these are people's livelihoods. But
absolutely.
Made that it's in the NBA you can literally fire a coach because you know what, I need to get it done and get in the play. I think about when the Bullets, they were still brought in Bernie Bickerstaff and fired Jim Lynam halfway through the season. They made the playoffs back in '97. You can make short-term moves if you want in the NBA. In college, you do have to be thinking, well, wait a minute, my head coach only has 2 years left. What's the overall plan here? Chief?
Right.
Yeah, I just don't think he has advanced this team enough. I mean, this is critical, this game against UConn. And UConn is a team that in the Big East tournament, I don't think really impressed all that much. But that being said, I don't know if anybody really in the Big East was that great. Georgetown is the weird one because, you know, they're getting better here. Yes, they had their, you know, moments during early on in the year, but they've got the big men like Wahab that can go down and get the ball. And then you've got guys like Jamarco Pickett, and Georgetown can maybe pull a little upset here. But as far as Maryland goes, I don't see them beating Alabama. I watched that whole game. If they, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but that's if they beat UConn. Alabama is a team that won the SEC, and they can shoot. They're big, and they're really strong. So I don't see a Sweet 16 move for Maryland this year. UVA, I feel like everybody's sexy pick now is picking Ohio over UVA. I mean, people forget that Hauser and Huff are two big men who can shoot, and they've got experienced guys like Kie Clark, and Beekman, the freshman, is somebody that had the big shot against Syracuse too. So I'm not discounting UVA whatsoever. Now they don't play defense like they used to, and sometimes they do live and die by the three a little bit there, but I wouldn't be picking UVA to lose in the first round here by an upset. And I'm from some of the analysis I've read and gathered, that seems to be a sexy, popular pick in the first round in upset.
And by the way,
NBC is not in this bracket.
can we talk we talk about Georgetown and what they did in the tournament. Let's talk about this for a minute. That was a 3-point game against Creighton, and then an 18-0 run and a half. I mean, they just blew out a
46-8 in the second half.
I mean, talk about impressive.
Yeah.
Well, and jumping back to Virginia, as somebody who once drove Tony Bennett to a restaurant through DC traffic and spent 45 minutes with him, I'm sold on him. And anybody who takes his team on a rafting trip after that bad loss to UMBC, and I mean this in all seriousness, you've got to find a way to connect and do somebody. That's not the easiest school in terms of to build a successful program because of the high academic standards, et cetera. And he's done it. And so I don't go to sleep on Tony Bennett, Virginia. And he was a lot of fun in the card ride. But Rob,
they're still the defending champs.
Yeah, they're still the defending champs.
Wait, what restaurant did you take him to?
I don't remember. He was an assistant of a U.S. Under 19 basketball team that was on its way or under something. This is several years ago to go to the Czech Republic for a tournament, and they had their practice at then Verizon Center. And I said to him, well, he said, can I get a cab? This is even before Uber. This is how long ago it was. And I said, well, no, I'll give you a ride. And because it was about a mile away, but because it was Friday afternoon in the summer in DC, it took about 45 minutes to go a mile. Rob, we'll let you conclude this March Madness discussion.
Just March Madness. I mean, I gave you my tidbit. I don't think I think that I think Georgetown can make a little bit of a run. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get to the Sweet 16, carry some of that momentum into the tournament that they carried from the Big East tournament. Maryland, I think I agree with my colleagues here. I don't see a really good run with Maryland. If we were looking at it from a national view, if we weren't looking at this team and covering this team and on some level rooting for this team to be successful, I don't know that we'd be picking them over UConn. But I think that we are a little conditioned to believe that they will be able to at least get one, and then anything they get from there is kind of gravy.
Right. And then now the host should be fired because I forgot you actually started the March Madness conversation. We'll come back to you. So closing moments here. Anything else? Anyone is on their mind this week as we wrap up the WTOP huddle?
Excited for Mount St. Mary's, a team that I try to fit into my updates on Saturdays. They're playing this Thursday against Texas Southern. They are a 1.5-point underdog, and would like to see the Mountaineers. Let's see both Mountaineers, West Virginia and Mount St. Mary's, make a little bit of a run. I don't know so much about West Virginia, though. They're kind of not playing well when they need to be.
Right, but it gives us an excuse also to teach the younger generation about Jim Phelan, because I actually had a couple of college kids ask me the other day, Mount St. Mary's, they have much of a history in basketball. And I said, well, gather around. I'm going to boil
Yeah.
you the story for 45 minutes. So there you go, George.
Yeah,
And the other-
and both
the
the
other
men's
big-
and women's team in
Yes,
the tournament
yes.
this year.
Right.
Yeah.
The other big question is, Gonzaga, always under the radar kind of team because they're far away, but they're undefeated. Can they do it? We'll see.
Okay. Well, good stuff this week. And again, last week, folks, if you're just tuning in this week, we discussed a lot about Maryland, and now they're number 2 seed. We're going to be talking about the women's basketball tournament as well. But boy, as always, there's only so much time to get everything in. And boy, that Washington football team always finds a way to sneak into the WTOP huddle, and they certainly did this week. We appreciate all of your time for watching us and spending time with us. For Rob Woodfork, Cichon, George Wallace, and Dave Preston, who had to get on the air. Imagine that. I'm Dave Johnson.
Break.
Rick. Yeah.
All right.